And when you're trying to make everyone happy, no one's really happy.
This is the crucial part of the business.
Like, look how fancy I look in my bank account, you know,
You won't
clients.
do it. You'll just be like, I don't want to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So anytime that you see something that looks a little bit too fancy to be a font, people like me make them.
Oh, look at these wonderful plates and cups that I have.
Like if you show up and just look really professional, it's way easier to get paid.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining this show. I have a big question to ask you. Is there a recent thing that you've spent a lot of money on?
I live in the Bay Area, so there are many things that I spent a lot of money on, mostly related to living in a very expensive place. But I think if I were going to talk about, I mean, literally the list is endless because the phrase a lot is very subjective. And I think anything over $5,000 is probably a lot. Let's go big or go home. I own my studio. And so I have always had a separate studio from my house just because I have a really hard time working from home. I'm at my house right now, but I can't be like forced to work from home. I have to choose, like it's like a vacation if I work from home versus like needing to work from home. And having that separate space really helps me be creative. When I first started out, I of course like rented studios because that's what you normally do and is normal for like most people. A couple studios in New York. I moved here in the Bay and had a studio for 8 or 9 years. And then when I moved over to the East Bay, I was thinking like I'm going to be here for a really long time. Should I keep renting or should I invest in a space? We had kids, so we knew we weren't going anywhere for like 20 years, you know? And I talked to a financial advisor, and all of the places I was looking at for renting were around like $2,500 a month because that's just what the going rate was for the kind of space I was interested in. And she basically talked me through it as like, yeah, you know, this is like, it's going to be a lot of money to spend up front, but as long as you're there for a long time, it will pay out just because, like, one, like you're not just throwing money away to rent because like rent like you can write off and all that kind of stuff, but it's not a thing that like accrues value over time. It just kind of disappears. Whereas even though it's like expensive to own property because there's a lot of things as a property owner that you have to pay for, like your HOA and insurance and your property taxes and all kinds of stuff, like honestly it ends up being not dissimilar to what I was looking at paying in rent. It also is like a bank account that's fun and you can use because it's like money that you plunk down and then ultimately hopefully the value of that thing goes up over time, you know, and that you're somewhere long enough where it makes sense to have that space. The reason, so I ended up buying two spaces. Me and my husband bought them together because, like, you know, it's expensive to buy property, and so we co-invested in them. They were two like 750, 800 square foot spaces that were next to each other that a couple had owned and planned to combine at some point, but then didn't. And then we were the couple that got them and combined them. And so
Wow.
the top floor is my office. And
Mhm.
originally, my husband and I were going to split the bottom floor because he wanted to use one side for woodworking, and I was going to use another side as either a print shop or a retail space. Because the area is not zoned for light industrial, his woodworking dream got kind of pushed aside, and then I got to take over the whole space. And so now, so now it's like half of the bottom floor is a retail store that I opened 2 years ago that sells my work and then also curated stuff that I buy that's like beautiful, useful things. And then the other half of the bottom is a print shop, and I have my letterpress there. I have a foil stamping machine, like all kinds of equipment. So yeah, it's been like incredible to have this space. There's a couple of things that investing in a space have done for me. For one thing, opening a retail store became less scary
Mm.
because I knew I was going to be there no matter what. So I didn't have to think about like, oh, I'm paying for rent at the retail store and I have to make sure that the store makes enough money to make rent. I was like, I'm going to be in this space, so the rent is free, you know, and yes, it's like there's opportunity cost for like not having someone else renting it, but it makes it a lot easier for me to like think, okay, well, I don't need the store to make a ton of money. It just has to like keep the lights on, which
Yeah.
makes it a really fun project. The other thing is like the space allowed me to have room to buy equipment that I want to use to make art. And anytime that I have like a little extra spending money for the business, I'm always like reinvesting in the business by buying like maker stuff because what all that stuff does is it really like removes the friction to create things for me. So like I don't like just creating things just to share on the internet. I like to create things to make like physical goods or to, you know, like make tactile stuff. And ultimately, if that gets shared on the internet, great. But if not, it's like it can be a real thing in the world.
So the listeners, they're piecing together what you do, but for their sanity,
That's
can we
fair.
get
That's
a little
fair.
bit of clarity of who you are and what you do?
I do a lot of things. So I will list the things that I do, starting with like the thing I'm known for versus the things that I do. There's a lot. And so I primarily am a lettering artist. So I went to school for graphic design, and then found my way into lettering and illustration and was one of the very early adopters of this kind of like new wave of enthusiasm for lettering. So I've been a lettering artist for almost 20 years. And so that's mostly what I have been doing professionally and what I'm known for. So I do a lot of logos and book covers and title design for films and television and commercial work and packaging and all kinds of stuff. So anytime that you see something that looks a little bit too fancy to be a font or a little too specific to be a font, people like me make them. I also make fonts sometimes, but making fonts is a totally different mindset. It's like a systems based way of working versus like a more bespoke artwork way of working. So I like to do that work, but it's just a really different kind of work. And then on top of that, I also write and illustrate children's books. I wrote a book about my own work that's called In Progress, and that just came out as a revised edition this year. And then on top of that, I have written and illustrated 5 children's books, 2 of which were New York Times bestsellers, one of which is coming out next year. And then so that's another aspect of my work. And then I also own 2 brick-and-mortar retail stores, one of which is below my studio, and the other one is a like an all ages art supply store. So it's like a kids creative gift shop kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then last but not least, that takes up a lot of my space right now is I co-founded a company called Studio Works with one of my old studio mates and 2 really amazing engineers where we're building business software for creative studios. So we started with invoicing and that's live now. And I can talk more about that later, but it's really, really exciting.
That does sound really interesting. I definitely want to talk more about that because there are so many people who are in build mode. There's a lot of innovation happening, and it'd be really interesting to see what it is that you're creating because it sounds like it's going to be benefiting. It is for the creatives, or is it for any type of business?
It's made like to address issues that are more specific to creative
Yeah,
studios, but honestly, it works for
it
like
works for.
any small business
Yeah,
that prioritizes not only just like ease of use, but also like the sort of looking really
yeah.
professional and like design at the core of what it's about.
It's nice to have tech out there that isn't just like, oh yeah, here's the function, but it's actually been considering the user and a creative user and their mindset in mind instead of just going like, okay, this is what can make money. This is what everyone's wanting to push out because it's going to be great for automation or something like that. It sounds like you're considering the user that is a slightly different user than the average other platforms. I mean, based off a few things you just said, not too much at all.
But totally. I mean, the main thing is most software starts off being designed for a specific group of people because the founders, like they themselves want that thing to exist or they, see a gap in the world and want to fill it. But the issue is that most software people have to raise money in order to
Yes.
like make it happen, to like hire people and pay people. And the problem with the like traditional venture capital world is that it's really like a growth above all mindset because investors that are VC investors, like what they're really shooting for is like 100x return on their
Yes.
investment, because most of the things that they invest in fail. So they need a couple of things to just skyrocket in order to make up for the failures.
Mhm.
And then even with angel investing, it's everyone's looking for like a 10x investment.
Yeah.
And when you're making decisions based on wanting a quick turnaround of money, it's a very different thing than making decisions based on just making your customers happy.
Yeah.
Like so it's very similar to real estate, not to like, harp on that too long, but similar to like when artists move into a neighborhood that's a little run down and kind of like make it their own and get by and like build it out and make it cool. And
Mhm.
then a bunch of like investors come in and go, look at this cool hip neighborhood. Let's go in and destroy it. And I think that's what happens with software a lot is that people will make a thing that's really working and vibey and cool and satisfying the needs of the people that it's helping. And then they get dollar signs in their eyes and then shoot for the moon and start ignoring the needs of the core users because they're trying to grow and get a lot of different people. And when you're trying to make everyone happy, no one's really happy. And so we are really set on kind of like it would be great if we grow beyond creatives as our users, but that would be sort of like a happy accident rather
Mhm.
than something that we're seeking. Because what we really want to do is build things that really work for the core audience that we're building it for, instead of like making features and tools that are sort of washy and generic that they
Yeah.
could be shoehorned into working for other people, which is really how a lot of us use software.
Mhm.
Like a lot of us figure out like fun duct tape, bubblegum ways of making things that don't work,
Mhm.
and we're so used to that that when something actually just works, it's kind of weird. Like it's almost like it's like you're like, I don't, but it just does the thing like
Mhm.
easily, like, and so we're trying to kind of try to do that magic thing where it's just like, oh, it actually just does the thing that I want it to do. And I don't have to like figure out a workaround to make it do that thing.
I need to know what this is. So what does your software do?
We're trying to basically build out all of the business tools that a creative studio would need, kind
Mhm.
of focusing on the like paperwork end of things. We're not trying to make like creative tools. And so one thing that we notice as a team is that, and it's really built for like individual creators and independent creatives and very, very small studios, right? Because if you're like a big studio, you're outsourcing a lot
Yes.
of this stuff and you need really robust tools when you're managing tons of people and all that kind of stuff. But what happens is independent creatives or people that run really small studios, what they do is that they'll pay for QuickBooks or FreshBooks or HoneyBook or whatever. And it works like well enough to do what they need it to do, but it's not actually like doing exactly what they need it to do. And it's not representing them in a way that makes them feel more professional to their clients.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to start with the thing that most creatives start with when they think about like being more professional, which is like using invoicing software. Because like once you're kind of busy, you're like, I should probably not do this as PDFs anymore. And so I just know enough people that pay for like business management software and literally only use it for invoicing.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to build like we collectively wanted to start with that because we knew it was the thing that like making money is one of the most impactful things. So just to give you a sense of like how we are customizing it to better suit creatives.
Yeah.
For one thing, it's like super designy as you would imagine, but it's not just like pretty invoices. So you have the most design control and customization options of any platform ever.
Nice.
Like basically we're trying to build it to feel like a white labeled software that you had some fancy developer make for you.
Mhm.
And because your clients are not our customers, we're not like being like studio works like all over it. Like it's really what we're trying to do is make it be more about you and less about us. So
Mhm.
that's one side of it is like just elevating how professional you seem to your clients based on this like very elevated feel of that initial paperwork that you're sending through. The other thing is, I think almost all creatives can attest to this is that like if you send an invoice through an online invoicing software, most of the time you're not paid through that invoicing software, right?
Mhm.
You're paid through whatever thing the client uses or bill.com or like whatever other system, PayPal, blah, 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 whatever. There's like a million ways to get paid, or you just get sent checks or people just want to send through a wire and ACH not in the system because they know that those systems often skim a ton of money off the
Yeah.
top. Like you can accept online payments like through like credit card and ACH, and we build with Stripe's API, but don't add a percentage on top of it.
Great.
So like FreshBooks is built with Stripe, but they add 1% on top of Stripe's percentages.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of things that secretly use Stripe, even though because it's just financial infrastructure. And Stripe makes it like hilariously hard to like use their software and not charge people extra money. Like they're like trying to get you to do it at every stage. And we're like, no, no, it's cool. We don't need to take anything. We just basically pass along the wholesale rates of Stripe to our customers. So like the absolute maximum fee that gets taken out of like a bank transfer or ACH is $5.
Mhm.
And because that's like the max for Stripe. So it's 0.8% with a maximum of $5. Whereas every other service, Bonsai, Honeybook, QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Wave, like everything, they take 1 to 1.5% with no cap. So it
Wow.
can be like a lot of money,
Yeah,
like if you're
adds
getting
up.
paid tens of thousands of dollars. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is because all of those services that exist, all of them, make a big chunk of their money from these transaction fees, they don't build an easy way for people to pay you outside of that platform. So if you send an invoice to a client and they're going to pay you through a third party service, there's no way for that client to interact with that invoice in a way that makes any sense.
Yeah.
QuickBooks has no skin in the game to make that possible because they want you to get paid through QuickBooks. And so what we do is we're built like we've already done a part of this, but we want to make it richer and richer, which we have this like mark as paid flow where people can say, I paid through this service on this date, mark as paid. So then your clients have a way to let you know how they're paying you. And
Mhm.
then they no longer get bugged about that invoice. And then you also have data to then check against your bank account to see how and when it came in. And
Mhm.
if they said, I sent a check on this date and the check doesn't arrive, it makes that conversation way easier with them
Yeah.
because you can be like, hey, it looks like you sent the check. I haven't received it yet. There's no like that weird black box of like, did you send
Did you
me
send the
money
check?
yet?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, exactly. And like, and then if that exists, like if they haven't interacted with the invoice, they haven't said, I sent the check, you
Mhm.
can be the like, I'm graciously giving you benefit of the doubt and write them and say, like, hey, I assume the payment went out already. If it did, can you just please mark how it went out so I can keep
Exactly.
track of it?
Yeah,
It just kind of really smooths that conversation. And that's something that I feel like a lot of creatives have a hard time with is
of
just
course.
sort of like, bugging people for money and talking about money with
They won't
clients.
do it. They'll
Um,
just be like, "I don't wanna do
yeah,
it."
exactly. And then like there's so many things that we've built into just this invoicing part alone that address these kind of needs. Like we send out a heads up reminder to the studio before a reminder goes out to the client so that if they've paid you and you forgot to
Mhm.
mark it, you can go and do that so that you don't get embarrassed. We also have really changed how line items work so that it's really easy to combine
Um,
flat rate, hourly, quarterly, like all those kind of rates together in the same invoice in a way that makes sense and is really easy to see. Because we
that's
heard from people who had issues that were like invoicing people per item. Like, say you're an illustrator and you're doing an icon library
yeah.
and you're invoicing like $500 an icon or $1,000 an icon. One of our users was talking about how they actually had an invoice get held up for months because the financial department misread an invoice as their per item as a per hour, and so they like refused to pay it because they were like, who are you hiring at $1,000 an
Oh my
hour?
god.
And they were like, it's per item. And it's just because a
Yeah.
lot of the UI on these things are designed so poorly where you can't parse that. And so we're really just taking into account like all the things that people bill for and
Yeah.
how they bill for it and how they itemize it. And just like because the use case is kind of specific, like making sure that that is something that, like if we're like noticing the things that people would kind of like jerry rig to make another thing work and be like, you don't have to do that. We're just
Yeah.
going to make a feature that is that, like in other services, even just adding something like a PO number or like a
Mhm.
project ID, that's like a thing that you have to just add in just like a random wishy-washy paragraph area. Whereas we're like making like dedicated line
Mhm.
items for that, like so really just trying to make it as clear as possible.
I love that, and I know it for the listeners, they might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, invoicing, I don't wanna know," but this is the crucial part of the business. You have to invoice, and there's so many people who don't do it, and I think the thing that all of these features seem really amazing, but if I look back at my husband's design studio when every touch point he had was so important, and remember the invoices they sent out. They're designed, they're like little things that they add to the invoice so that they're on brand to who they are. Like, it's another touch
Yeah.
point, and the fact that you can't he was using Zero, and he's like, I need to send my own PDF because this invoice is not on brand for me. I won't send it. So now he's doing manual invoicing instead, and he's like, where's it like all the not like where's the invoice, he knows where it is, but like doing storing it, uploading it, there's just so
I
much
know, I
extra
know.
effort.
Well, and I think like people that don't invoice people a lot, they don't realize like it's sort of the dress for the job you want kind of thing. Like if
Mhm.
you show up and just look really professional, it's way easier to get paid. Like to both get paid like faster and to
Yeah.
get paid more money.
Mhm.
So like if you send along like stuff that looks really buttoned up. Like if you have a really buttoned up proposal, a really buttoned up invoice, a really buttoned up soft like contract, all that stuff, they take it seriously. Like you're taken more seriously, you're much more likely to be able to negotiate the rates that you want, and you're way more likely to get paid faster because if you have that stuff buttoned up, they know that you will come after them,
Mm.
like for the money. If you're a mess, they won't prioritize you,
Yeah.
like it's really easy to get deprioritized by bigger clients
Yes.
or to get even just like straight up bad actor messed with by people.
Yeah.
But if you look like you could be a litigious person or you look like you're someone that understands the legality of what's going on,
Mhm.
like you're just way more likely to get paid and to get paid on time and everything. And so That's where, I think a lot of people talk about how like design really matters for like the cost of things and like it drives the price of things and all that kind of stuff. But you can really see very clearly how if a design is well thought of, if everything is very smooth, if it's just easy, just everything happens so much easier and faster. And yeah, I mean, just bringing that both like the understanding the importance of design, not just as like a aesthetic vibes thing, but
Yeah,
as like a thing that like
function.
legitimately is better for business, I
Mhm.
think is not something that a lot of other companies do because they think about most of design as being like a layer on top of
Mhm.
function, whereas design and function should really work together. And that ultimately, you don't want design to get in the way of function. Design should like enhance and enable function.
Oh, is this already on the market or when is it launching?
Yeah, yeah. So it's already up and at 'em.
Nice.
And right now, what we have as a part of the software is there's like a few things that we do. We've got the invoicing and payments part. We also have just released and are currently building and making more rich, like a client management, like client and context
Oh,
management
cool. That'd be really good.
thing. Yeah, so we're trying to sort of build like a light CRM, like not actually in like a sales pipeline kind of way, but in a way to like better manage your contacts and remember details about people and then ultimately building in like reminders
Mhm.
for like reaching out to people
Yeah.
and also like associating paperwork and stuff that you have with specific people and clients. Contacts are separate from clients, so you can have a contact of a client that is then associated with multiple clients over time because they've
Mm.
shifted jobs and things like that. So we're just trying to basically make it so it's easier for people to like manage those relationships.
I want to ask you about how you decide around making big purchases. So you talked about buying the studio. You even talked about speaking to a financial advisor. And I don't know, wait, how old were you when you bought your studio?
That was in 2018. It wasn't so long ago. I bought an apartment when I was 24 years old. So I like comfortable investing in things if I feel that that investment will have a return on some timeline. Like I think this is the thing that I think makes me comfortable with big purchases. Like I don't make a big purchase if I think it's just like a goes away nothingness or if it's a risk.
Hmm.
Like to me, I bought that apartment in Bushwick in New York in 2008 when I was 24. I just basically knew if I stayed somewhere for 5 years, worst case scenario, the value of that apartment is probably just flatlining because like New York is not a place in which property values like drastically dip.
Yeah.
And so I was like, worst case scenario, I get to like write off this all the interest on this place and I get to live in a place that I own and hopefully it makes some money. And that's how I felt about the studio too. Like I was like, we invested a lot in like making the studio really nice. So like right now, it's not worth what I invested into it just because it's been, you know, 5 how many years now? So, a few years. I forget what time it is, like, all the time. It's like it's like almost 10 years, yeah, and, like, I can brass tax it with you. So, we bought those 2 spaces for $800,000, which is not nothing, but it felt like an appropriate price for, like, Bay Area real estate that could be turned into an apartment because it's zoned as live work. And so, like, if I wanted to, I could just be like, "Oh, we're putting in a shower and a real kitchen," and suddenly it's an apartment, like, whatever. And that has huge value. The renovation, which was, like, extensive, like, we did, like, a, like, gut renovation and completely redid it and worked with an architect, like, it's really quite nice. Like, probably spent another, like, $750,000 on
Oh,
the
wow.
renovation.
Yeah.
So, like, all in, it's worth, like, what or, like, worth, like,
Yes.
1.4 million, which is a
Mhm.
lot of fucking money. That's a lot of
Mm.
money. I knew that as long as I held on to it for,
Yeah.
like, 15 years, 20 years, like whatever, I would at least make that money back.
Yes.
Like if I had to sell it a year or two later, no, it would have been a loss.
Mhm.
But holding on to it for a long time, I'll get that money back, you know? And in the meanwhile, I get to use it. And so like that's the thing that I really like about real estate in general is that it's not like the fastest way to make money because like if you really just want to make money, you just like invest in random stock market stuff and just watch your money climb, but it's super unfun to do that because that's just like it's just money that sits over there and you don't get to do anything with it. And then you feel weird about ever drawing from it because when you draw from it, you have to pay taxes on it. So it's like a whole thing that it's like unusable money that is not fun. And yes, yes,
I love
you
this
make
perspective.
yeah. You make more money that way, but you in the meanwhile, you're just sitting around with no money because you put your money over here and you're not allowed to touch it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like for me, real estate is like bank account that I get to have fun with.
Uh-huh.
You know, like it's like you're plunking it in a bank account that has hopefully a slightly higher return than a like standard savings account. But in the meanwhile, you get to use that thing. Like you get to like hang out in your bank account, and like host workshops and like store your stuff. It's great. The bank account can do things for you. You could be like, look how fancy I look in my bank account. And so, like, to be all the like, not only the idea that it will not go negative. Like as long as I can just hang on to it long enough where I can take the money back out like a bank account. In the meanwhile, there are all these sort of like secondary impacts that you get from an investment like that are hard to quantify
Yeah.
because it's not like money in the bank, but it actually kind of is money in the bank. So having a physical space that's really nice, like if I'm on a Zoom with clients, I'm at my house right now, but if I'm at a Zoom with clients in my office, clients immediately are like, "Oh, is this your house?" And I'm like, "Oh no, this is my office." They're like, "Oh." And then all of a sudden, like, I'm not
Mhm.
sure about it, feedback starts to drop away. They're like, clearly, you know what you're doing because you have this fancy office. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that is really helpful. Like, again, like just the projecting professionalism and like you
Yes.
have it together really helps with getting work and getting paid well. The other thing, like I said, with opening the storefront, if I didn't own the space, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable
Mm.
investing in opening a storefront because there's just not a ton of money in physical retail. Like it's just like a slog. Like anybody that makes a lot of money doing a physical retail store is probably also doing a ton of online sales, or they're selling like very, very high value items like
Yeah.
jewelry and things like that that have a really high markup.
Your second bricks and mortar is rented or is it also owned property?
That one is rented. And that one, like, basically my store below my studio does not make money. It
Okay.
loses money. I hire like underemployed designers to like work in my shop so I don't have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
So like if I was down there,
It break even, but then you cost too much. You'll still not make money because you.
I should be doing other things. Exactly. And of course, like I pay my employees like better than they should be paid because I just don't like to not pay people well. So I
Um,
pay like the very high end of what retail workers make, even though they're just like literally sitting in a room working on their own work, like while
exactly.
nobody comes in.
Dream
But the
job.
others, I know it really is. Like if anybody in the Bay Area is looking for just like a place that you're basically paid to sit at a desk and do your own work. That's what it is working in my store. And so, but my other shop is in a more busy area. That store isn't like bananas in terms of the money that it makes, but it makes enough money to
Profit.
help support the other store.
Okay,
So
great.
basically, like at the end of the year, the two of them break even or are like very, very minorly profitable, like in the low thousands profitable, not in like the like $5,000 profitable, not like anything crazy.
So why have it?
'Cause it's so fun. Well, there's a couple reasons. Again, there's like a secondary effect to having a store. The lore of being a shop owner is awesome. And they're like, "Oh my God, like I love your space." Like people, you'll just
Yeah.
talk to people. It's really different to talk to locals when you are a person who invests in your local community, which
Yeah.
is what having a store is.
Mhm.
Like it's ultimately like while it's fun for me, clearly anybody that runs a store, this is something that I've realized. Anybody that owns a store or a restaurant, yes, they're doing it as a business, but they're also doing it to just be part of the community and to like
Absolutely.
invest in their community. And people really respond to that. And that is just fun and delightful and awesome. And I love talking to other small business owners and meeting people, and it's great. That's really fun. It also becomes a thing I can activate if I want to. Not that I can like just like push the money button on it, but I can have like an open studio and
Mhm.
probably sell $2,000 worth of stuff if I have an open studio. So it's not like I don't and can't do that all the time because
Yes.
also if I did all the time, it would lose all of its like specialness. But I can activate the space and do that, and that's nice. And I've just met such like interesting people through it.
Yeah.
Like the film director Boots Riley, like was working on a film across the street from my studio, and then he sends people into my shop like you should go check out Jessica's shop and stuff like that. And so like I have like random like Hollywood director-ish people like coming in. It's just really neat, like that's not something that you'd ever anticipate. And also too, the other thing is because I have a resale license and I can wholesale stuff, I can just like buy myself things really cheap. Whatever I sell in the store,
Yes.
I can then buy at
Mhm.
cost basically. And so if I want to have an art supply that I use frequently, I can buy it for the shop and then buy it from myself, but I can buy it from myself at 50% off.
Love
You know,
that.
so that's great. There's all these like random little fun things about having a shop that isn't like I'm making a lot of money, but it's
Yeah.
fun. You know.
And there's so much that you said in having the shop that really resonated with me because I used to own a restaurant and being part of the community and getting to know the people because you have regulars. You'll have regulars in the shop as well
Yeah.
who want to support the shop. So they'll choose you over anything else and talk about you. And I think that is such a crucial element actually when you have a bricks and mortar business, which I think people on social media don't really feel the same way. You have another support
Yeah.
system. Yeah, it's like an ephemeral community. Is that the right word to describe it? Rather than a concrete kind of regular basis where you physically see people and connect energetically. I really loved everything you said that because it just brought me back to my days of owning that restaurant and thinking exactly the same thing. And especially when you're saying I had a shop attached to mine as well. So I could literally buy anything I wanted wholesale and go like, oh, look at these
Oh,
wonderful
it's great.
plates and
Yeah.
cups that I have. Anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I honestly it's so funny because I feel like I've spent, like, decades researching for this store without realizing it just because I love, like, all the things that I have in the store are things that I, like, encounter, and when I go to new places, I love going to little shops where there's, like, local artists making stuff or, like, there's stuff that I could discover, and it really, like, activates me in a fun way, and I get to sort of, like, take a thing that is kind of almost an expensive hobby of just, like, going other places and buying things that I find cool and turn it into a thing that's actually part of my job, like, and that's
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think, like, I think there's a lot of us out there that, like, get really excited if a thing that we do makes someone else excited to do a thing.
Hmm.
Like who doesn't want to be inspiring, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
And the thing about owning a brick and mortar shop that I know is literally going to be there forever,
Hmm.
just because like the cost to own it is just the cost to staff it.
Yeah.
Like if I need to roll it back, I can just like work there more myself or
Hmm.
make it by appointment or whatever, but it's never going to go away. Like there's
Yeah.
never like I can literally I know that it's going to be there for the rest of the time that I own that building. And the thing that's cool about that is as someone who's gone through this now of like opening a brick and mortar retail, it's like a big investment to do
Yeah.
that. Like you sort of need like minimum like $20,000 to just like even just build out desks and shelves and things like that. And it's really hard to want to feel comfortable doing that if there's not something in the neighborhood that's an anchor for that
Hmm.
neighborhood, right? So like that's why you see these sort of pocket neighborhoods pop up where there's like a restaurant that's been open for 15 years
Yeah.
that's like really cool and then all of a sudden now there's a coffee shop and
Yeah.
now there's like a this store and now there's a that and everything just kind of pockets around that anchor. Where my studio is, which is in downtown Oakland, I just feel like there aren't a ton of anchors anymore, especially when it comes to retail. Like there are
Mm.
definitely some like bars and restaurants that are like kind of long-term anchors, but retail not so much. And like my long-term goal for the studio is being that anchor in the neighborhood that makes other people want to come to the neighborhood and like pocket around it. Cause not
Um,
only is that like really fun for me because then I'm like, oh, then more people get to come to the store and then I get to like have like be in a more vibrant, cool neighborhood. But it's also really good for real estate investment, like I'm like, how about I just lose money for a decade so then I can boost my property value? Like it's just kind of, whatever works.
You know what I love in our conversation is that fun seems to be an important element in your life and in the way that you actually operate. Talk about the bricks and mortar business. I'm moving cities, and one of the things I've been longing for, because I used to have a bricks and mortar, I exited my business in 2017. Every time I go anywhere, I'm like, where can I buy another bricks and mortar? And I'm like, I don't need it for my business right now. What would I do there? And I'm like, I just want a physical space. And you've kind of articulated why I'm craving it. And it's because I want that physical community. I miss that. I don't think I could have articulated before this conversation because I'm like, yeah, I just want it because that's what I'm used to. But I'm like, no, it is because of that community element, because you become an anchor, like you said. I had my place for 10 years before I sold. And I was the only place that remained there. Everyone else closed. Everyone else, it was a tough business in London to stay open
Yeah.
because it's expensive. And I'm like, okay, I was one of those places that was the anchor, like, okay, let's go next to the Swedish restaurant. And that would make sense for people. And I crave that right now. And I'm like, just talking to you now, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to go and look for a bricks and mortar place and see what I will do to it. And
I think about it all the time. Like, I'm dying to buy the place that's next door to my studio,
oh
and
really?
just to I would literally do it to have the top part of it just be like a bonus space for me so that I want to get into doing like wholesaling of some stuff this year,
Okay.
and I just don't have space for it yet, and I don't want to rent space for it because then again we get into this thing of like,
Yeah.
then I got to really do it, like where it's kind of fun if you're like, if you're like, "Ah, I can kind of like feel my way through it." I kind of just want to like renovate it, set it up, and then rent it for next to nothing to whoever wants to put a retail shop there. And
Mm,
I can be like their spirit guide of just being like, make a cool thing and I'll support you while you do that cool thing. Just because I'm getting a benefit of
yeah.
you being there by more people are coming to the block and then going to my store.
Yeah.
I'm getting the benefit of using the upstairs space, like, whatever. And so I'm just like, how can I do this just over and over and over again where I'm just like, I want to have the space and be the person that like invests in the space. And then I have
Hmm.
a way to make the space make sense financially, whether there's like an apartment above it or something that
Yes.
makes it so that it kind of is break even.
Yeah.
And then I can just be like a risk taker for other people
Yeah.
because I don't need their money, which means
Hmm.
I
Play.
can be generous and play and let them do their thing. Because I think like that's one thing that people don't do. And again, this kind of goes back to like the venture capital thing, right? Is like we didn't raise any money for Studio Works because we didn't want that to be at the core of our
Yes.
business, right? And like I think it's really difficult to make cool and interesting things if you need it to be immensely profitable right away. Like that's just like not possible. Like you need to sort of be able to feel around and see what's right and like take the temperature of the neighborhood, and or even like I opened the second retail store was meant to be sort of like a more kid friendly extension of my main store where I was selling like prints of mine that were more kid friendly, and it was kind of like meant to be more like art, stationery, whatever. And it
Yeah.
literally the store just became a kids gift store that had very little of my stuff in it. Cause that's like what the neighborhood wanted it to be. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so you can't know what something is meant to be until you do it.
Yeah.
And then it like evolves into the thing that it's supposed to be. You have to like have money behind that to be able to go through that process.
Yeah.
And if you have investors and if people are like demanding a return on that investment, it's just not possible. Like
Yeah.
then you just end up doing the thing that makes the fastest money, which
Exactly.
is usually pretty vibeless, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
As it would normally be. Thank you for such a wholesome and exciting conversation. Thank you.
I hope everybody wants to go out and like do weird fun things for money instead of just trying to make more money faster. It's great.
Yeah. Where can people connect with you?
I am very easy to find on the internet. I am on Instagram and I answer all my DMs, and I'm also on Threads. You can email me, but it's kind of a pit of despair, and so it's much easier to DM me than it is to email me. And yeah, so I have a website where you can see a bunch of my work. It's a little out of date. Oh, I also have a newsletter, and if you like, it has kind of the vibe of I don't know if you get like Christmas cards or anything like that from people, but
Mhm.
it sort of has the vibe of like the typed out family update Christmas card because
Oh, I love that.
it's like a mix of like here's some things I'm working on, but mostly like here's me having a fight with my son's karate teacher and she failed me in front of everybody. It's like very it's very personable. I love hearing from people, and people always tell me that they read it till the end and it just feels like they heard from a friend. So that's fun.
Jessica, you've been absolutely awesome. Thank you for being a guest and thank you for being so open about everything that you have gone through financially in terms of buying your studio, your thoughts, your process, the way you think about it, your bricks and mortar business, everything. So I'm really excited to see where all this will go and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Great to chat.